Hi everyone, welcome to our first video series lesson for the 7th and 8th grade level on complex thesis statements. So obviously today we're going to be talking about complex thesis statements, which are the backbone of any academic essay, right? The thesis statement tells your readers what is the main idea in your paper and how are you going to organize your paper? What's the paper's overall structure? So many of you are probably already familiar with the listing format thesis. So essentially, you'll have one main claim with three listed supporting reasons. So this could be something, just to give you a super simple example, something like watermelon is the best food because it's sweet, hydrating, and nutritious, right? Something like that. A root claim, watermelon is the best fruit, and three listed reasons. Now, this thesis statement is a totally fine starting place for the younger grade levels. It does set up a great three-paragraph structure for your essay's body. However, as you become a more advanced writer, the listing format thesis generally isn't complex enough to accompany your more developed ideas, your more complex argumentation. So that's where the complex thesis statement comes in. Now, to be clear, before we even really jump into the lesson, this is just one strategy for writing a complex thesis. So to jump into today's lesson, this is the complex thesis format that I'm teaching, starting with the skeleton. So the skeleton is this structure at the top of the slide here in the black font. So you can see that I call it a skeleton because you have some words filled in and some blanks, right? You have to fill in the rest of the, I guess you would call it the body then, right? You have to fill in the rest of the body. So you see, you still have the three-part structure, but each part is an argument rather than just one supporting reason. So you essentially are integrating three related arguments to form your essay's overall argument. So you have these three claims that you should be finishing. In this essay, I will argue that blank. This will show not only that blank, but also that blank, right? So you can see I've filled this in below. So this is just from a paper that I happen to write. All right. In this essay, I will argue that in both ancient China and contemporary Korea, one can observe the influence of fundamental ideologies on actual monastery practice. So that's a full claim, right? Then we have our next one. This will show not only that these influences relate particularly to lessons on no mind and the use of koans. So now I go into a specific claim about the similarities these influences share, right? And finally, but also that some noteworthy discrepancies exist as well. And then just note my little star at the bottom here. Every single claim in this thesis skeleton should fit the requirements of a thesis statement in general, meaning it should be contestable, it should be specific, and it should answer the prompt. Now, there's no prompt here. I guess the prompt could just be analyze Zen Buddhism in ancient China and contemporary Korea, right? So every claim should answer the prompt. Okay, so now we're going to get to actually putting the skeleton thesis together into a complete thesis. So note that the skeleton thesis is what I like to call a little bit clunky, right? So it does require a lot of revision to put this together into a concise, complete, and fluent thesis. Okay, so you can see I've just copied the same skeleton you guys saw on the last slide in red, and now we're going to be looking at how did I revise this? How did I put this together into a complete thesis? All right. In both ancient China and contemporary Korea, one can observe the influence of fundamental ideologies on actual monastery practice. So you can see that claim corresponds to my first skeleton claim above. And importantly, I eliminated the entire first piece of the skeleton. So I took out the entire first portion reading, in this essay, I will argue that. You should always, always take that piece out, okay? Just jump into the claim in your thesis. So that's my first skeleton claim. Next, I jump into particularly relating to lessons on no mind and the use of koans. So you can see that I've taken out a lot of the words in that second skeleton claim to integrate it into that first claim more smoothly. However, some noteworthy discrepancies exist as well. So that one I kept more complete and just added that transition word in there. So let's read this through one more time. In both ancient China and contemporary Korea, one can observe the influence of fundamental ideologies on actual monastery practice, particularly relating to lessons on no mind and the use of koans. However, some noteworthy discrepancies exist as well. Okay, so that's one very complex argument, but also sounds concise and clear in the revised thesis. Now, again, note the star I have at the bottom here. The skeleton transitions, okay? This will show not only that, but also that. Those are the transitions. The first one isn't a transition because it's not connecting two ideas, so it can't be a transition. The second two are connecting ideas, so they're transitions. Those skeleton transitions are a great place to start, okay? They do function well in a lot of thesis statements. You can see that in my thesis statement, I chose different transitions. So for the first transition, I chose to transition with punctuation. And in the second one, I chose the transition however. Okay. So as you gain confidence with this complex thesis format with revising the skeleton, you can start replacing those skeleton transitions to ones that better fit your argument. But that's not a requirement at the start. All right, so here we just have some more examples. I color coded here so you could sort of see the individual skeleton claims and how they factor into the final thesis. All right. In this essay, I will argue that nationalist movements do not result in important long-term changes for women. This will show not only that women's contributions to nationalist movements and the changes that accompany them are born out of circumstance and temporary necessity, but also that nationalist movements result in equally rigid gender roles for women in post-nationalist societies. So this example honestly isn't that complex. It just happens to be a pretty complex topic that I'm discussing. So try not to get overwhelmed by some of these vocab words. Okay, so moving to the completed revised thesis, note that, this entire first skeleton piece is taken out, right? Like I said, you're going to do that every single time. So that one's taken out. And then I've bolded the transitions that I chose instead of keeping word for word these exact transitions, right? So I chose the transitions in fact and thus. So let's read through this. Nationalist movements do not result in important long-term changes for women. In fact, women's contributions to nationalist movements and the changes that accompany them are born out of circumstance and temporary necessity, thus resulting in equally rigid gender roles for women in post-nationalist societies. All right, so I have two practice thesis statements for you guys, one on this slide and one on the next. You will simply be using the filled in skeleton to practice revising a complete, concise, clear thesis statement. All right, so this particular thesis, I have written a version of it that sticks very, very strictly to the skeleton format. So you guys can use those transitions to a little bit more carefully revise your thesis using the skeleton. I've also included one that uses different transitions to connect these different claims. So at this point, please pause the video and complete the activity because I will be explaining the revised thesis statements in just a minute. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to pause the video here. All right. So hopefully you guys have paused the video and completed the thesis statements. We're going to look at two different options for how you could revise the thesis statement, although there are other ones as well. All right. So the first one, like I said, sticks much more carefully to these skeleton transitions. So let's read through. Beloved's mysterious origins cause conflict that drives the plot, showing not only how she compels others to face certain aspects of themselves, but also how Morrison uses Beloved's unclear past and its effects on other characters to explore the mental and generational devastation that slavery causes. All right. And then in the next example, we have transitions that are different from the skeleton. So we have the transitions for and more important. So let's read through here. Beloved's mysterious origins cause conflict that drives the plot, for she compels others to face certain aspects of themselves. More importantly, Morrison uses Beloved's unclear past and its effects on the other characters to explore the mental and generational devastation that slavery causes. All right. So again, on this slide, we have a sample skeleton with arguments already filled in, and you guys will be revising to form a complete thesis. Again, please pause the video here and complete the activity because I'm going to be going over the answers in a few seconds. All right. So here is the revised thesis this time. Let's read through. Frankenstein's mother and Professor Dr. Waldman, two valuable figures of his life, motivate him to create the monster as his mother's death and Dr. Waldman's encouragement activates his perpetual determination and ambition to ever uncover the science behind life and death. However, Frankenstein's main motivation for creating the monster is personal glory. His arrogance stems from his easygoing childhood and loving attention from his family. So this person actually used punctuation quite heavily to transition between their three main claims. So I definitely encourage you guys to keep going with the video series. We'll be coming up to punctuation in a few videos, and then you guys will have the skills as well to use complex punctuation like dashes or semicolons to also help you connect these claims into a concise thesis statement. But that's our video on thesis statements. So thanks for watching, and please continue to the next video.